blackboard. I was having internet issues last night, so it was kind of difficult to upload. Is it there? It's under presentations.
Oh, yeah.
I leave it as a PowerPoint, not as a PDF, so you can actually download it, and you can download it whichever way you want, like 6 per slide or 3 per slide, so that's completely up to you. So the first part of this particular PowerPoint is essentially the same landmarks, and we'll just talk about them. If there's anything interesting or relevant to what's on the PowerPoint, then we'll kind of discuss that a little bit. So for the lower leg, the 2 main bones, the tibia and the fibula. The landmarks that you should know, obviously the malleoli, your ankle bones, and the articular facet. Okay, that's the articulation between the 2 bones, distally, down at the bottom. Okay. And the fibular notch on the tibia is where the fibula articulates with the tibia. And the malleolar fossa, what's a fossa generally? What's a fossa? It's a hole of some sort, or a divot. So the malleolar fossa, that's on the inside of your fibula. That's kind of where the talus sits. What you need to know with this particular slide is that the foot, generally, and this is from a literature standpoint, so when you're reading material, if somebody refers to the midfoot, you need to know what bones are in the midfoot. The tarsals, your cuneiforms, cuboid, and navicular. In the rear foot, or hindfoot, so hindfoot and rear foot are the same. Okay, so in some sources you'll see rear foot. You have the calcaneus, talus, in the back of the foot. Okay, and then in the front, you have your metatarsals and your phalanges, and including the sesamoids. Okay. Flexor hallucis brevis. I might want to make a note. That's where the sesamoids are. They're in the tendon of the flexor hallucis brevis. Okay. I understand. I'm assuming you guys know what a sesamoid is. What's the biggest sesamoid in your body? Somebody from state.
Tell us.
It's too easy. There are sesamoids in the hand, like tendon. I know we're skipping right from the ankle to the hand, but similar to this, flexor, and the brevis, hallucis. Sesamoids in your foot, in the hallucis tendon, sesamoids in the hand, the hallucis tendon. Moving the thumb or moving the great toe. Again, for this slide, just the regions, the terms, forefoot, midfoot, and hindfoot slash rear foot, and then the bones within those regions. The hindfoot, we have the talus, the head, the neck, and the trochlea or the dome. The one thing to be familiar with is this is where, if you have issues with the dome of the talus, okay, so if you look at the mortise, that's your tibia, that's your fibula, the talus kind of sits in there, and that's the dome. If you have severe ankle sprains, you could, and it's covered with cartilage like every other bone. And if you have chronic injuries, ankle sprains, you can start damaging the cartilage on top of that. I'll bring in some x-rays of my own ankles, because there's lesions on top of my talar bone just from chronic ankle sprains. And when that happens over and over and over again, cartilage doesn't regenerate well, which means that later on down the road, my old professor at York University, Gus Candilis, they get their ankles fused. It hurts too much. So that's what can happen. So the dome is a site of chronic injury potentially, especially on cartilage. Calcaneus, the body, the tuberosity, the medial and lateral processes, the tuberosities, which are on the bottom of the foot. This is your foot. Okay, so medial and lateral tuberosities. What do you think inserts into there?
Okay, Neil, sorry.
Sorry? These are tuberosities. Anytime you see tuberosity anywhere in the body, there's tuberosity there for a reason. It's because something attaches to it.
Achilles.
Sorry?
Achilles.
Sorry?
Achilles tendon.
Achilles tendon? Close. Achilles tendon is back here. There's also tuberosity. How about on the plantar surface?
Plantar fascia?
Plantar fascia. A muscle is quadratus plantae on the bottom of the foot as well. So it's just the site of other muscular attachments. Okay, we always start off with the bones first because we name all the different aspects of the bone. The malleoli, there's attachments there, tuberosities. So anytime you see a fossa, something sits in it. Anytime you see a tuberosity, something attaches to it. Now the question is, what attaches to these things? Okay? So we'll start off with stuff like this, the tuberosities. Okay? Sustentaculum tali is on the medial side. It's right, it's like a bookshelf. I don't know if you can see that. But it's under here. Okay, so it's like a little ridge, and there's stuff that goes under it. We'll talk about what goes under the sustentaculum tali. Just know it's on the medial side. There's something similar called the peroneal tuberosity. Sorry, peroneal groove for the peroneus longus. Again, it's a groove. Something goes under it. So sustentaculum tali, something goes under that as well. Okay. Medial side for sustentaculum tali, lateral side for the peroneus longus groove. Okay. Peroneal trochlea, again, that's on the lateral side, and then flexor hallucis is on the medial side. Again, we'll go over this once we get into the actual muscles and tendons, because again, these landmarks are there for a reason. Navicular tuberosity, for those of you who have flat feet, it's normally the thing that sticks out on the medial side. For those of you who like to twist your ankles on a regular basis, there comes a point when you stretch the lateral ligament so much that for those, how many of you twist your ankle so much that it starts to hurt on the medial side? Like on this side? Okay. So, for me, if I twist my ankles, it never hurts on the lateral side anymore. It hurts right on this. That's your navicular tuberosity. Why and how? So we're not stretching anything on the laterals, on the medial side, right? We're stretching everything here, but if you stretch everything too much, it's not going to hold. So, what happens on this side then? Learn? Compression. Okay, so I get a bone bruise, essentially, and it sucks, because it really hurts, and it takes a while to go away. Okay, but the navicular tuberosity hits up against the medial malleolus, and it's really sensitive on the bone, so much so it feels like a fracture. Okay, but that's what potentially could happen on that tuberosity. There's other structures that attach onto that tuberosity as well. Side note, it's called the spring ligament. Okay, we'll talk about the spring ligament later on. Your cuneiforms and your cuboid, that is part of what foot? Fore, hind, or mid? Midfoot. Okay, so your cuneiforms, you have three: medial, intermediate, and lateral. And the cuboid is the most lateral. The cuboid is the most lateral. Metatarsals, the heads, the base of the fifth, phalanges, sesamoids again. Sorry, that's wrong. Flexors brevis. I want to correct that. And the one metatarsal you need to be aware of, because we'll talk about fractures, and you get a fracture on this little bad boy. It's called the base of the fifth. Really well known. Oh, if you haven't taken your shoes and socks off, it might be a good idea to do so now. Just so you can air it out for your partner. And so that you can start poking on things as we go through some of this stuff. But air it out. I'm not judging. And I'm not assuming your feet smell. But just in case they do, air it out. If you need to wiggle your toes and fan a little bit, by all means do so. I'll take mine off as well, just in case. Okay? But on your own foot, try to find the base of the fifth. And all you do is start at your pinky toe, you can work your way up, and you'll feel the base of the fifth. And I think what tendon inserts into that? On the peroneals. Right? Peroneal brevis. There's another one that also inserts in there. So peroneus brevis inserts right on the tip. Peroneus longus doesn't touch this. Peroneus longus goes long underneath the foot. Peroneus tertius is the forgotten cousin. He inserts right on top of the base of the foot. So peroneus brevis inserts here. Peroneus tertius inserts there. Now, does that matter? Maybe. Okay, it depends. what range of motion hurts. If it's strict dorsiflexion that hurts, with a little bit of eversion, it's probably proteus tertius. Okay. If it's a lot of eversion that hurts and a little bit of dorsiflexion, maybe it's proteus brevis. They're also innervated by two different nerves. Tertius is innervated by one nerve, brevis by the other. We'll tackle that later. But think about which ones you think it might be. So there's two peroneal nerves. There's your deep and your superficial peroneal nerves. Okay. One of those nerves innervates the lateral compartment, and one of those nerves innervates the anterior compartment. Let that simmer for a little bit. Okay, so before we get to this, what nerve innervates the anterior compartment? Deep or superficial peroneal? 50-50. Close your eyes. How many of you think anterior compartment, deep peroneal nerve? Confidence. Take a guess. How many think superficial? All right. Most people pick superficial in the anterior. Is that correct? What do you guys think? Because if this were Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you guys probably would have lost. Deep, superficial. So, common peroneal nerve comes around the head of the fibula and then divides into deep and superficial. So that might be pertinent information during your history when you think of neuropoems and myopoems and which peroneus muscle is affected. So a couple pieces of information from just that little 2-minute spiel. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with this person's ankle. Okay. So is it painful and weak with dorsiflexion and just dorsiflexion, or is it painful and weak with dorsiflexion and eversion? Okay, and that's what you'll find out during your range of motion testing. Okay, again, if it's painful and weak with just dorsiflexion, point tender on the base of the fifth, the more likely it's proteus tertius. Now, what's the big deal? Why do you need to know the difference? It's one less exercise you need to do. You wouldn't have to give the person any kind of eversion exercises. That's part of your rehab. Just do strict dorsiflexion if you think it's proteus tertius and that only. Okay. So you guys see how knowing that affects your rehab plan? Makes it more efficient? Now, can you get the person to do like flexion, like plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion for every single ankle? You can. Some people may not want to, though. Okay, if you want to be a good therapist, you have to be really specific of what's going on and treat that specifically, and then add stuff around it if you want. So we will definitely give you dorsiflexion exercises for that peroneus tertius for friction, not the tip, but the top of the base of the fifth if there's a tendon issue. And then maybe, if you have time today, you can also throw in some inversion, eversion, and plantar flexion exercises just because you're there. But definitely get that one exercise in, and we'll do frictions for sure as part of your rehab because we know it's proteus tertius. Okay. Now, if you can do that with all the other muscle groups, fantastic. Questions about that? Okay. This is at Netter. Netter's a fantastic book. If you don't have it, it's probably good to have. I still have mine back from 1998, and I haven't gotten rid of it. I actually got a new version, which is a little bit better, but I still like my original version. Same thing with Magee. I still have, I forget what edition it is, but those are fantastic resources to have, and this is why. What is this? Part of the foot called? Just yell it. Hindfoot. Okay, these next two tables I've taken right out of some sources. Magee, do you have to know this for my class? No, but you might need it for the CTA exam. Okay. Hindfoot again, midfoot, and forefoot. These are the joints in those regions of the foot. The main things we'll talk about are the hindfoot and the forefoot. There's not too much movement over here because they're plain synovial joints, plain synovial and syndesmotic joints. There is a ball and socket, but it's not a ball and socket like your shoulder. Okay. A little bit of movement there. But everything in the midfoot are glides and little rotations. That is really advanced stuff. Okay, now if you decide to do osteo or manual therapy stuff, you will know this stuff. But to get by with the CTA exam and for this, and for most of the things, probably 95% of things you do in your practical placements, this and this is what you need to know. Okay? So in the hindfoot, you have your more common talocrural and subtalar joints. Talocrural. Get my sweater stuck on these things. Between the tib fib and the talus. That's your talocrural. I don't know why it's called talocrural, but it's the talocrural. Underneath the talus, subtalar. Plantar flexion, dorsiflexion at the talocrural, inversion, eversion at the subtalar. Your range of motion testing is important because if inversion, eversion is problematic, it's stiff or hypermobile, it's a problem with the subtalar joint, not so much the talocrural joint. So we have to do glides rather than gross range of motion. Okay. Talocrural is a modified hinge, 1 degree of freedom with 2 movements, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. And then same thing with the subtalar. The synovial joint, inversion, eversion. There is minimal gliding and a little bit of rotation, depends on who you ask. But for our purposes, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion at the talocrural, inversion, eversion at subtalar. Just leave it at that. Okay. Distal tib fib is a syndesmotic joint, syndesmosis, and there's minimal movement. That's this here. Okay. If there's a distal anterior tib fib joint, what did I just say? There's a proximal one, there's got to be a distal one. If there's an anterior one, there's got to be a posterior one. Okay. So I call this a ITF. That's just my shorthand for it. So anterior inferior tib fib as opposed to anterior talofib. Anterior talofibular is the ligament everybody sprains when they invert their ankle. Okay, that's the talus and the fibula. This one is the tibia and the fibula. This one's a regular lateral ankle sprain. This one is your high ankle sprain. This one takes longer to heal. Okay, we'll talk about those conditions. Again, I'll just plug in some stuff for the other sections of this topic. Anterior inferior talofib, anterior inferior tib fib, and then anterior talofib. Okay. And that's the ankle. In the forefoot, you have your TMT, your tarsal metatarsal joint, intertarsal joints, metatarsal phalangeal, and interphalangeal. With the interphalangeal, there's your distal and your proximal, just like in your hand. Okay. This one, if you're looking at your hand, is equivalent to your knuckles. Intertarsals is between your tarsals, or carpals, and tarsal metatarsal. Okay. So if I put this back up, you can see all the joints there. Tarsal, metatarsal. This is, what's this joint? Can't see. Metatarsal phalangeal. I don't know if you guys picked that up, but most joints are named after the bones on either side. How about, what's the joint between here? Inter. Bones on either side. Intertarsal. Now, if you want to get really technical, you can say between here is like the cuboid joint. Something along those lines. You can make it up. I don't care. Well, I just call them intertarsal. And then up here, between the calcaneus and let's say the cuboid, cubocalcaneo. I just put the two bones together because I see them flip-flopped all the time. Those are where the joints are. Okay. Tarsal, metatarsal. Again, if you look at the foot, so we've got our tarsal bones here, metatarsals here, and that's the joint. There's only gliding that takes place. I don't know if you guys notice that, but I can't really move too much here between this and this. So we'll talk about moves later on, but when you do a move, you hold on to one end, you hold on to the other, and then you just move one side, or you stabilize the other. But just realize here, there's only gliding that takes place. So that's normal movement. If you take someone's foot and go like that, and it feels really, really stiff compared to the other foot, then they might be hypomobile. That might be part of your treatment plan. Intertarsal joints. So if you take the cuboid and the cuneiform, or take the cuboid, or take the navicular, and if they're stuck, you can hold on to all these other bones. Sorry, that's the cuneiform. Take the navicular, and you can do gliding movements if you want. Okay, but these are your intertarsal joints, and there's very minimal movement. Your metatarsal phalangeal joint, that's your knuckles. Again, you can do mobilizations there as well to improve flexion, extension, or abduction and adduction. Now, there is a way to do a particular mobilization to improve one of these movements, but we'll talk about that later on. You'll get a lot of that with the TVIS class. It's based on what side is round and what side is not round, and you move one and you stabilize the other to improve either flexion or extension. Okay, but before you get to that stage, you just need to know what movements occur at that joint and what type of joint it is in order to be effective. Okay, so this is your starting point. With your interphalangeal joints, now there's some of you who may not probably jam your fingers back. I can't bend this. I've jammed this so many times. But if I needed to improve flexion extension with this, because it's a hinge and snowflake joint and flexion extension occurs, I can do a move. I can do an AP or a PA to help improve flexion extension there. It is possible. Okay. So for this, focus on hindfoot and forefoot. Don't worry about this too much and all the different areas of it, but just know that this is intertarsal, and there's not much movement that occurs in the midfoot. Okay. The main things we'll talk about are these two joints, this one a little bit, but these two for sure. And most of your issues when we talk about conditions or pathology, the tarsal metatarsal area is where you